I am a Philistine warrior from Ashdod, and I remember a particular battle against the Israelites where we did not only win, but also took their God. We thought we took their pride and we will take their God captive, but that will be our greatest undoing. We were fighting near Ebenezer, and we were winning. Our forces were strong, and the Israelites seemed weak and disorganized. Victory seemed certain for us. But then something strange happened in the midst of the battle. From the camp of the Israelites, we heard a great shout. It was loud and filled with excitement and hope. At first, we didn't understand what was happening. Why were they cheering when they were losing so badly? Our leaders were curious and sent scouts to find out what was causing the commotion. When the scouts returned, they brought surprising news. The Israelites had brought the ark of their God into their camp. The ark was a sacred chest that they believed held the presence and power of their God. This news spread quickly among our troops, and fear began to creep into our hearts. We remembered the stories we had heard about the God of Israel, how he had struck down the Egyptians with plagues and parted the Red Sea for his people. The presence of the ark meant that their God was with them in the battle. Some of our men started to panic, fearing that we would be struck down by this powerful God. In the midst of our contemplations, the reassuring voice of our leaders rang to calm us, saying, "Be strong, Philistines, fight like men, or we will become slaves to the Hebrews just as they have been slaves to us. Stand firm and be brave." Despite our fear, we continued to fight. The battle was fierce and brutal. The Israelites, now emboldened by the presence of the ark, fought with renewed strength and courage. But we Philistines were determined not to be defeated. We pressed on with all our might, driven by the thought of victory and the need to survive. In the end, despite their initial surge of hope and strength, we managed to overpower the Israelites. We captured the ark of their God, thinking it would bring us great power and favor. Little did we know that bringing the ark into our land would lead to even greater troubles for us. This battle taught us a valuable lesson about the power of the Israelites' God and the significance of the ark. Though we won the battle that day, the presence of the ark among us brought fear and suffering that we had never imagined. As a Philistine warrior, I couldn't stop thinking about the ark of the Israelites' God. It was strange that, despite bringing the ark into their camp, the Israelites had still lost the battle. Normally, we couldn't stand against them when their God was with them. What had changed? Why hadn't their God fought for them this time? I pondered if the Israelites had done something to anger their God. Had they sinned against him? Perhaps their priests had committed some offense. We knew their God was powerful and had led them to many victories before. There had to be a reason for his apparent absence in this battle. Curious and seeking answers, I approached one of the Israelite captives we had taken. His name was Benjamin, and he seemed willing to talk, though he was clearly saddened by the outcome of the battle. "Tell me," I asked him, "why didn't your God fight for you? What happened to make him abandon you?" Benjamin sighed and then began to explain. The sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, brought the ark to the battlefield. They were priests, but they were wicked men. They disrespected the offerings made to the Lord and took the best parts for themselves. They also treated the people with contempt. He continued, "The Lord had warned them many times through a prophet and even through their father, Eli, who was the high priest. But they didn't listen. Their sins were great, and the Lord pronounced judgment on them. He said both Hophni and Phinehas would die on the same day as a sign of his judgment, which happened today." I listened intently, shocked by what I was hearing. "So, their own priest brought this doom upon them?" I asked. Benjamin nodded. "Yes. When they brought the ark, they thought its presence alone would save them, but they had already angered the Lord with their actions. The Lord's power is not something to be taken lightly or used selfishly. He allowed us to lose the battle as part of his judgment against the wickedness of Hophni and Phinehas." His words made sense. It wasn't that the God of Israel had lost his power. Rather, he had chosen not to defend those who had dishonored him. This revelation made me realize the gravity of their God's justice and the importance of faithfulness to him. Benjamin's story explained why we had managed to capture the ark and defeat the Israelites, despite the ark being among them. Their defeat was not due to our strength, but because of their own corruption and the judgment of their God. This insight filled me with a mix of awe and fear, knowing that the power of the Israelites' God was real and that his justice was severe. When we Philistines captured the ark of the God of Israel, we brought it to Ashdod and placed it in the temple of our god, Dagon. We set the ark beside the statue of Dagon, thinking it would show our superiority over the Israelites and their God. The next morning, when the people of Ashdod went to the temple, they were shocked. The statue of Dagon had fallen, face down, on the ground before the ark of the Lord. It was as if Dagon was bowing before the ark. This disturbed us, but we thought it was just an accident. So we lifted Dagon back into his place and continued with our day. However, the following morning brought an even more shocking sight. Dagon had fallen again, but this time his head and hands were broken off and lying on the threshold. Only his body remained intact. It was clear that this was no accident. The presence of the ark had caused this. As if this was not enough, things began to get worse for the people of Ashdod. Many of us started suffering from painful swellings or tumors. It was a mysterious and severe affliction that spread rapidly throughout the city. No one was spared. Both young and old were affected. Our homes were filled with cries of pain and fear. We quickly realized that these misfortunes were connected to the ark of the God of Israel. His hand was heavy upon us because we had taken his sacred ark. Panic spread through Ashdod, and the leaders of our city convened to decide what to do with the ark. Recognizing the power and wrath of the God of Israel, we decided the ark could not stay in Ashdod. We needed to rid ourselves of this source of our suffering. The ark was then sent to the city of Gath, but the troubles and sickness followed it there as well. The presence of the ark brought nothing but disaster wherever it went among us Philistines. This experience taught us a harsh lesson about the power of the Israelites' God. The destruction of Dagon and the afflictions we suffered made it clear that we had provoked a mighty and fearsome deity. As the suffering continued and spread to other cities, the Philistine leaders realized that something had to be done about the ark of the God of Israel. In desperation, they called for the diviners and priests, seeking their advice on how to stop the calamities that had befallen us. When the diviners arrived, they examined the situation and listened to the reports of what had happened in Ashdod, Gath, and Ekron. They could see that the presence of the ark was the source of our troubles. They told us, "If you want to send the ark of the God of Israel back, do not send it away empty. You must return it with a trespass offering to acknowledge the wrong you have done." We asked, "What should the trespass offering be?" The diviners replied, "Make 5 gold models of the tumors and 5 gold mice, representing the plagues that have struck you and your leaders. This will be a sign to the God of Israel that you recognize his power and seek to appease him. Perhaps then he will lift his hand from you, your gods, and your land." They also warned us, "Do not harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh did. When the God of Israel showed his power among them, they suffered greatly because they refused to let his people go. Remember the plagues that struck Egypt and how Pharaoh's stubbornness brought more suffering upon them. Do not repeat their mistake. Humble yourselves and send the ark back with the offerings." Following their advice, we prepared a new cart and selected 2 cows that had never been yoked. We placed the ark of the Lord on the cart, along with a chest containing the gold models of the tumors and mice. We then hitched the cows to the cart, but we took their calves away to ensure the cows would naturally want to return to their calves, testing whether the God of Israel was indeed guiding them. We watched anxiously as the cows began to move. To our amazement, they went straight along the road to Bethshemesh, without turning to the right or left, lowing as they went. This confirmed that the God of Israel was guiding them, and it was indeed his hand that had brought the plagues upon us. As the cart reached Bethshemesh, the Israelites rejoiced to see the ark returning. They offered sacrifices to their God, and our leaders, who had followed the cart at a distance, saw that the ark had safely left our land. They returned to Ekron that same day, relieved that our suffering might finally end. The advice of the diviners had been wise, and by following their counsel, we learned the importance of respecting the power of the God of Israel and not hardening our hearts against his will. After the ark of the God of Israel was returned to its rightful place among the Israelites, a remarkable change came over the land of the Philistines. The plagues and suffering that had afflicted us ceased, and a sense of relief and peace settled over our cities. No longer did we live in fear of the wrath of the God of Israel. The painful swellings that had afflicted so many of us disappeared, and the cries of anguish that had filled our homes were replaced with sounds of joy and gratitude. With the removal of the ark, The presence of the God of Israel was no longer felt among us, and our land was restored to its former state. The fields flourished once again, and prosperity returned to our cities. There was no longer any need for fear or despair, for the troubles that had plagued us had passed. Though we had learned a hard lesson about the power and sovereignty of the God of Israel, we were grateful for the peace that had come with his departure. We vowed to never again provoke his anger or harden our hearts against his will. With the return of peace, the people of the Philistine cities went about their lives, but that left an indelible mark in our heart. Questions continue ringing in our hearts each time we see the temple of God. Dagon was regarded as the greatest of all the Philistines' gods, but that never remained the same. Dagon lost his honor. Worshippers no longer. We have not stopped asking, who is this God whose presence brought an end to the glory and power of Dagon? Indeed, there are gods and there is God.